it's Rob Bryanton, the Imagining the 10th Dimension video blog, and back again with another kind of psychedelic 60s kind of thing Jason has put together for us here. The title of this blog is You and Me and We Are All Together from October 15th, 2008. You're going to read along with it if you go to 10thdimension.com/blog. So this entry, we start with a quote from Albert Einstein, which goes like this. A human being is part of the whole called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. We experience ourselves, our thoughts and feelings, as something separate from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from the prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. We shall require a substantially new manner of thinking if mankind is to survive. And again, that beautiful quote is from Albert Einstein. Now, in David J. Brown and Psychedelics, we talked about the possibility that psychedelic experiences might actually be used in the treatment of addictions and mental illness when given in properly supervised circumstances. Though I have no personal experience with psychedelics, I'm fascinated when I read about the experience of others who have gone out to the edges of perception and brought us back some jewels for us all to admire. Last blog was entitled I Know You, You Know Me, a phrase from a Beatles song. This time we're using another phrase, this one which John Lennons tells us was based upon an insight that came to him while he was taking an acid trip. This is taken from I Am the Walrus, is also quite famously known as a song John Lennon concocted after learning that school teachers were incorporating Beatles music into their lectures, and Lennon took great delight in creating a song which would be so deliberately obscure no one would be able to interpret it. Nonetheless, the opening phrase of the song is reported to be a serious effort by Lennon to explain an insight he perceived while under the influence of LSD. And the lyric is, I am he, as you are me, and we are all together. Last blog, in the blog entitled I Know You, You Know Me, we talked about the feeling of connectedness that a growing number of people are sharing right now around the world. It's so easy to be cynical about ideas like this. And yet books by serious scientists like Dr. Jill Bolte-Taylor, whose My Stroke of Insight I've talked about a number of times before, are showing us that there is more than just naive wishful thinking to such an idea. It appears that it is part of our basic human awareness, the underlying seeds of consciousness that make us who we are, that is naturally driven to find the connections of the one to the many. I don't usually talk about my dreams in this blog, but I had a doozy a few weeks ago, which, if you will indulge me, I'd like to share. Have you ever had a dream that seemed to cover an impossibly long span of time? In this dream, I started from my current life, interacted with people in ways that were sometimes wonderful, sometimes frustrating or infuriating, and eventually I died. After a brief break, I started another life, this time still laden with the memories of what had ticked me off and what I had enjoyed in my previous life, and this definitely had an influence on my new life and the decisions I made. Again and again I repeated the process, and eventually I started to recognize myself in other bodies, often acting from a certain belief system which was flawed by misunderstandings and bad luck that had come before, and eventually I had lived every life that there was to have lived in the history of the world. I awoke with a feeling that if only we could have all had such an experience, we would all be able to understand why so many of us can appear to act with unreasoning negativity. We are all interacting without truly understanding what makes the other person do and say the things they do. Okay, it was just a dream. Everyone has strange dreams from time to time. But since this project has me obsessed with finding connections, I saw an eerie echo of my dream a few days later when I read this passage from Michio Kaku's The Physics of the Impossible. He's talking about Richard Feynman, whose sum over histories method is one of the concepts I've used many times in my book and this blog. And Michio Kaku writes, Feynman revealed the true secret of antimatter. It's just ordinary matter going backward in time. This simple observation immediately explained the puzzle that all particles have antiparticle partners. It's because all particles can travel backward in time, and hence masquerade as antimatter. And this interpretation, by the way, is still the explanation currently accepted today. Michio Kaku continues, with his thesis advisor, John Wheeler, Feynman then speculated that perhaps the entire universe consisted of just one electron, zigzagging back and forth in time. Imagine that out of the chaos of the original Big Bang, only a single electron was created. Trillions of years later, this single electron would eventually encounter the cataclysm of doomsday, where it would make a U-turn and go backward in time, releasing a gamma ray in the process. Then it would go back to the original Big Bang and then perform another U-turn. The electron would then make repeated zigzag journeys back and forth from the Big Bang to doomsday. Our universe in the 21st century is just a time slice of this electron's journey, in which we see trillions of electrons and anti-electrons. That is the visible universe. And as strange as this theory may appear, it explains a curious fact from the quantum theory, why all electrons are the same. Maybe the reason is that the entire universe consists of the same electron, just bouncing back and forth in time. Once again, that was Michio Kaku writing in The Physics of the Impossible. Now, Feynman's crazy notion about one single electron and antimatter particles traveling backwards in time grew into his theory of quantum electrodynamics, which has been experimentally verified to 1 part in 10 billion, making it one of the most accurate theories of all time. Feynman and his colleagues were awarded the Nobel Prize in 1965 for this discovery. And if you're reading along in the blog right now, you can click and read his Nobel acceptance speech from that year, which I recommend that you do so. It's an entertaining and insightful exploration of the creative mind. Could our universe really have only one electron, whizzing back and forth within timelessness to create the trillions of electrons we see at any particular now for our universe? Could consciousness be the same, only one consciousness traveling back and forth across time, experiencing the endless complexity of our universe from a unique perspective each time, but ultimately seeing itself complete the same journey over and over again? Perhaps John Lennon and Richard Feynman were thinking about ideas that were more similar than either of them could have ever realized. Now, to close here, since we're talking about Beatles music, let's finish this entry with what I would consider to be the most Beatles-esque of the 26 songs I've written for this project. And it even begins with a mention of Paul McCartney, who reports that the first time he smoked marijuana, he had the insight that there are 7 levels to our reality. And this song is called 7 Levels. My name's Rob Bryanton from the Imagining the 10th Dimension video blog. Enjoy the journey.
Paul announced it with a gleam in his eye. Timothy found it written on high. Sanskrit mystics, chakras too. Everybody says it's so, it must be true. There are 7 levels to the universe. 7 levels, from 7 down to the first. First comes the point, a singularity, impossibly small. As in geometry, no width or depth. A place to start, imaginary construct, the very first part. Then comes a line, the first dimensionality, the simple way from point A to B. The second is a branch from one line to another, a splitting apart. It's easy to discover there are 7 levels to the universe. 7 levels, 7 down to the first. 3 to jump to another 2. Is the curve, 3's our space, the world we live in, everything and every place. Now you find when you fold the lines, A to B is shorter, they can even collide. 4 is time, a line so narrow, past the future, straight as an arrow. A simple way, from one day to the next, a journey taking us from birth to death. There are 7 levels to the universe. Travel to a 3. 7 levels, 7 down to the first. 2, 5, jump to another 4. connecting the line. Back to the future, a wrinkle in time. This is how it's always gone. We choose from 5 for the 4 we're on. There are 7 levels, levels to the universe. 2 to 5, travel to a 4. 7 levels, from 7 down to the first. 4 through 6 to jump to another 5. Change reality if we wanted to live in the world where JFK was never murdered 6 a bit away. The 7's all a singularity, simultaneous, every possibility, every yes and every no. Eternity, infinity, impossible to know. There are 7 levels, levels to the universe. 7 is infinity, a formless 4. 7 down to the first. Things get interesting here in 4. There are 7 levels, levels to the universe. 7 is infinity, a formless 4. 7 levels, from 7 down to the first. Things get interesting here in 4.
Another kind of psychedelic 60s kind of thing Jason has put together for us here. The title of this blog is You and Me and We Are All Together from October 15th, 2008. You're going to read along with it if you go to 10thdimension.com/blog. As something separate from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves. So this entry, we start with a quote from Albert Einstein, which goes like this. A human being is part of the whole called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. We experience ourselves, our thoughts and feelings from the prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. We shall require a substantially new manner of thinking if mankind is to survive. And again, that beautiful quote is from Albert Einstein. Now, in David Hi, it's Rob Bryanton, the Imagining the 10th Dimension video blog, and back again with